Greetings, all, and welcome to Introduction to American and Nevada Politics, Political Science 101, here at the College of Southern Nevada. I'll be your instructor for the course, Dr. Francis Joseph Carlton III. And what I want to do here is say hey, and I want to talk about the syllabus, and then I want to talk a little bit about how best to navigate the course on Canvas. All right. So first things first, I'm going to run through the syllabus. There is a copy posted on Canvas. Apropos of that, you will see that the best way to navigate this course, pro tip number one, best way to navigate this course is to access it through the home page regularly, 2 or 3 times a week, to keep up with the flow. All right. Problems I've had in the past with students who don't access things through the home page, right? They'll have some sort of I think it's like a calendar function, and it tells them what's coming up next in terms of due dates, vis-a-vis assignments, quizzes, discussion threads, writing assignments, whatever. They'll get that, right? That notification on Canvas. They'll click on it, and they'll see the assignment. You know, they'll see, let's say it's a current events quiz. They'll see that. But what they won't see, if that's how they access it, is the current events articles that it's based on. That's a problem, right? I'll get panicky emails the first week saying, what's current events quiz number 1 based on? Chapter 1 of our book? And I'm like, no, it's based on 3 current events articles that are posted on the home page of Canvas. And what you're going to see there is a module called Current Events Number 1. You'll see the quiz itself, and you'll see the 3 articles that it's based on. All right, so you need to see a lot of these assignments in context, and the only way to do that is to access them on the home page. That's where I centralize everything for ease of access. That's where you're going to find the discussion threads, the quizzes, the exams, the writing assignments, the discussion, everything, all the material that we're covering, the narrated slides, the videos, the chapters, everything. It's all on the home page. Can't emphasize that enough. Okay? Huge pro tip off the start. So among the many things you'll find on the home page, beautifully organized for your convenience, is the syllabus. Okay. So it's an 8-week course, right? And we need to cover roughly, depending on how you sort of categorize it, but roughly 15 topics, 8 weeks. That's about, right, 2 modules a week on average. Some modules go a little more slowly, some go a little faster. I generally mount the substantive modules as needed. So I don't want to sort of pour it out on you all at once. Rather, I mount the material in serial fashion, which is another reason why you want to access this Canvas shell 2 to 3 times a week to keep up with that flow of publishing modules. Right? I am over in the C building at the West Charleston campus. If you wanted to drop by at a prearranged time sometime this summer, that's cool. I'm on the 2nd floor, Suite 269. 269, I forget what letter my office is, but there'll be people up front. Ask them, and then they'll show you where my office is. F. Letter F. It's in the syllabus. The syllabus, by the way, is kind of a contract between the instructor and the students. All right? So it behooves you to review it a little bit. I do make myself extra available for Big Blue Button meetings online from 9 to 11 in the morning on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. That's a preferred time slot and day slot. If you want another day or another time slot, email me. Email me regardless. If you want to do a Big Blue Button meeting, that's fantastic. Email me ahead of time. I'll set it up. I'll send out the invite. We'll do it that way. It works really well. That's a function you'll see on your Canvas shell. My email address is on the syllabus, francis.carlton@csn.edu. That's a great way to communicate with me. Also, messages within the Canvas shell are fine, of course. There's a telephone number there. It's an old-fashioned office telephone. I don't really use it much at all, but there it is just in case. And then a lot of this, right? A lot of the language in the syllabus is pretty boilerplate. Course description, pretty obvious, right? We're covering American and Nevada politics. We'll get to the course outline soon enough where you'll get a feel for what topics we'll cover. Course objectives, course purpose, blah, blah, blah. My big sort of modification this time around, because I've been doing this for several decades, I'm using for the first time an open educational resource, a free resource for students, so you don't have to buy a textbook. It's called American Government 3E. It's not a very dynamic title. I guess you get what you pay for, at least in terms of the title. That's not a snappy title, but it's a title. And there's a web address there in the syllabus, but I also have it posted on the home page on the Canvas shell. You're also going to be required or expected to read various chapters from a book by Michael Bowers over at UNLV called The Sagebrush State. Don't worry about that. I'll post them within the proper modules throughout the summer as PDF files for your ease of convenience. All right. Right, students are often understandably concerned about the bottom line, right? How do I assign grades? Randomly, according to my arbitrary whims. I'm feeling very monarchical today. No, not really. I actually have a system, hopefully rational and defensible. Right, different categories of assignments here count for different percentages. It adds up to 100%. This is how it goes. 4 examinations, 4 multiple choice examinations, and that includes the final. I just call them Exam 1, Exam 2, Exam 3, and Exam 4. None of them are comprehensive. Each one covers a set amount of material. 4 exams. Each one counts for 15% of your grade in the course for a total of 60% of your grade. All right, so more than half of your grade comes from your performance on the multiple choice examinations. By definition, it's open book, open note. I don't use any of that surveillance software. I'm not really comfortable with that. I'm pretty libertarian. Each exam will be about 50 or 60 questions. I give you about 90 minutes to take the exam, which means, you have some time to cross-reference your notes, the book, the slides. But a lot of those, hopefully, you'll know right off the top, get them done quickly. Gives you a little more time to cross-reference other questions as you look for the correct answers. So keep your eye on the clock when you're taking the exams. I'll send out a pro tips video before exam 1. Now that being said, when I say 4 exams worth 60%, therefore 15% for each one, I do drop your lowest exam score at the end of the summer. So really, I'm just counting 3 of them for your grade, but you do take 4. I count your 3 highest. Some students who do really well in the first 3 don't take the 4th one. That's cool. Then they get a 0, and then I drop it, and then it all goes smoothly. But play that, as you wish. But the 4 exams, I will drop your lowest one. An additional 15% of your grade will be based on current events quizzes. There'll be 5 of those throughout the semester. I do drop your lowest one. 5 of those. In aggregate, that's worth 15% of your grade in this course. So it's, a small percentage, but not terribly small. It definitely counts for a significant part of your grade. Not a large part, but a significant part. Right? If you want to get your best possible grade, it's going to behoove you to do well in the current events quizzes. They'll be spaced out throughout the summer. The timing is on the syllabus. And each current events quiz will be based on 3 current events articles. That's why you need to access those quizzes ideally through the homepage. Because on the homepage, you'll find a dedicated module, Current Events Quiz 1, Current Events Quiz 2. And attached to that current events quiz will be the 3 articles. Pro tip here, because I'm old school, because I'm old, I would print off the articles ahead of time, have them with you when you take the quiz so that you can cross-reference them and get your highest possible grade. I usually give, I think 10 questions in 20 minutes. All right? And I drop your lowest one at the end of the summer. Discussion threads. So that gives us 60 plus 15, 75% of your grade so far. Discussion threads, there'll be about 10 of those by the end of the summer. Keep an eye out on Canvas for those. Those pop up pretty frequently. My expectation here is pretty low key. I'll be blunt. It's pretty low key. I'm really just looking for you to make a good faith effort to engage with the issue and engage with your fellow students. Apropos of that, I do want 2 posts for each discussion post that I put up. One in which you post your own original idea, response to the prompt. I'll provide a prompt. You give a response to the prompt, and then observe other students' prompts, how they've responded to it, and then respond to one of your fellow students in a meaningful way. Not just I agree or I disagree, but why, right? So 2 postings for each discussion thread from you. I grade them pretty leniently. I'll be blunt. I'm really just looking for a good faith effort. I'm looking not for the use of artificial intelligence. In fact, I'm looking for the opposite, not the use of artificial intelligence. Again, I'm being quite lenient to begin with. There's no reason to use AI. It defeats the whole purpose of the exercise, which is to mimic people conversing with one another in a democracy about important issues in a meaningful and human way. Okay. Just like when you talk with your friends, right? You don't use AI to phrase how you talk to them. At least I hope you don't. I don't want you to do it here either, like at all. Just none in this area. None. All right, don't worry about your grammar or your spelling or anything else. I mean, worry about it, right? Always work on improving that, but I'm not grading you on that, so don't use AI, please. I'm begging you. If you do use AI, I will give you a 0. So it's not super fantastic, and there's really no good reason to do it. Not on that assignment. That's worth 10% of your grade in this course. And I drop your 3 lowest. At the end of the summer. And then finally, 2 short writing assignments, and I drop your lowest one. So if you do well on the first one, if you do the first one and you do well, you really only need to do 1. And I've had students who skip the first one and then do the second one. So there are 2. It will behoove you to do both, but you could also do only 1. And then you'll get that grade. And then I'll drop your lowest one, which might be a 0. Or do both in good faith, and I'll drop your lowest one. Either way, you get the idea. I'll send out more about that as the first due date for that first one comes up. Basically, I'll give you a prompt, and I'll attach some material for you to reference in your 2 to 3 page paper. You can use AI on this one. That's cool. Just document how you use it. At the end of your little piece, document how you used AI. Ultimately, I do want to see, however, your own writing. So if you want to use it to generate ideas, some ideas on organization, that's cool. But ultimately, I do want it to be your words. Right? So limited use of AI on those writing assignments. And that's 15% of your grade, and that gets us up to 100%. All right, so I base it on your exams, your current events quizzes, your short writing assignment, sort of, and then the discussion threads. All right. Again, a lot of boilerplate that's in all syllabi here at CSN, and that's cool. I'm not going to go over it. Course outline. All right, course outline. We're going to start out talking about the concept of government in general, and then we'll talk specifically about the version that we practice here in America, at least so far, fingers crossed, constitutional democracy. I'll take a normative position on this, as I think I should. I'm going to defend it as the preferred method of governance. Right now, it is estimated that about half the world lives under various forms of autocratic rule. About half of us live under various forms of constitutional democracy. The world's at kind of a tipping point right now, and things seem to be rolling more towards autocracy right now and away from constitutional democracy. Everywhere. Here, everywhere. It's a global phenomenon. Countries that were already autocratic are getting more autocratic. Countries that were sort of weak democracies are tipping over into autocracy, at least a soft form. And what had previously been relatively strong democracies like our own, we're also sort of trending towards some weak version of autocracy. And again, it's a global phenomenon. It's a big issue. It's about as big as it gets. Because remember, right? Constitutional democracy is an aberration in terms of historical forms of governance. Right? Almost all of human history is a history of autocracy. Centralized power in a single individual, exercising that power in very unilateral fashion. And it can actually be done well. I'll be honest here. Autocracies can be very successful forms of governance, and autocrats can actually be quite popular. But they don't play well with others. They centralize their power and exercise it often in very personal ways. But it can work. There's no question it can work. It worked throughout most of human history, and it works today in about half the world. So it's a viable form of governance. I just think it kind of sucks normatively. So constitutional democracies, right, have only been around in significant form for a few hundred years. And I don't know, as they say, it's a bit of a chancy affair. And its ability to prevail globally is far from assured. So we'll talk a lot about that. We live in interesting times, as they say. I never would have thought that coming out of grad school in the year of our Lord, 1991. Never would have thought I'd be talking about it in that way here in the year 2025. It always seemed like a done deal. It's not a done deal anymore, if it ever was. All right. And we'll also talk about, by the way, in that first module, demography, how that shapes our politics. Our racial demography, our gender demography, our geographical demography, our religious demography. It's really an interesting sort of a sociological concept that's deeply relevant to political science. So we'll kick things off, right, with kind of large issues, very philosophical. We'll talk about the founding of the American Republic, right, the American Revolution, the creation of the U.S. Constitution, the Founding Fathers, all that good stuff. Again, kind of large issues at the beginning of the course. As we progress, the issues go from very large to sort of more focused and technical. Then we'll move on and talk about the founding of the great state of Nevada. Because, right, this is a 4-credit course. One of those credits is teaching the Nevada component. So we'll talk about that. There is, a book by Michael Bowers that I mentioned already. That's the first time that you'll be reading material from Michael Bowers is on that founding of the great state of Nevada. I'll have the PDF files that you need in that module. He's really good, Michael Bowers. Did a nice job with that. It's kind of the standard text on Nevada politics. American federalism, we'll talk about that. Right, how we've decided, I think correctly, to divide power up between the national government, state governments, and local governments. We also have tribes here in America, right? In the native tribes that occupy kind of an odd position in our federal system, sort of neither fish nor fowl. Under the control ultimately of Congress, but not under the control of the states or local governments unless Congress delegates that power to the states. And then the federal government would oversee those relationships. It's really tricky. Now, Chief Justice John Marshall, from back in the beginning, described native nations as semi-sovereign. almost like a nation within a nation, but not exactly. Under the control of Congress, ultimately, semi-sovereign. And we also have territories, right? Where do those fit in? It's an odd thing. Again, neither fish nor fowl, right? Not a state, not the national government, but some lesser form of state that we call a territory. Most obviously, Puerto Rico, right? But also Guam, also the Northern Marianas Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands. Sort of a hangover from our period of colonial expansion at the end of the 19th century. That's how we acquired, for example, Puerto Rico. It's also how we got Hawaii, which for a long time was a territory. It's also how we got Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. we forcibly lease it from Cuba in perpetuity. Where does that fit in? That's not a territory, but we do forcibly lease it from Cuba as a result of the Spanish-American War in the late 19th century. It's interesting stuff, people, I tell you. And then we'll talk about state and local politics here in the state of Nevada. We'll talk about the relationship of local governments to the state government, and we'll talk about how the state government raises money through taxation and how the state spends that money, and we'll talk about how local governments raise revenue and how they spend that money. We'll talk about civil liberties, Bill of Rights stuff, super cool stuff. I love that material. We'll talk about civil rights. We have a deep tradition here, right, of progress on civil rights over time. We started out rather poorly with things like slavery, but over time we've gotten a whole lot better, but there's always work to be done, and that's cool. You have to enjoy the journey because we never quite reach that destination. We'll talk about the politics of public opinion, the politics of voting in elections, the politics of the media, a lot to be said there, as you might imagine. We'll talk about the politics of our political parties, that institution that we love to hate. Although these days we hate a lot of institutions, don't we? It's part of the crises of democracy here and abroad, growing citizen distrust of governing institutions like political parties. We'll talk about the politics of interest groups, the politics of Congress, the politics of the Nevada legislature, the politics of the American presidency. I mean, we will talk about President Trump because he's our current president, and he certainly is in many ways, and I'm going to leave it at this. We'll fill the blanks in later. He has had an historic presidency 2.0, if you consider his first term 1.0. So we will have some things to say about that, but we also are going to talk about the institution as a whole. We don't want to get sucked too much into current events, because then we lose the thread of the course, right? We want to teach here or cover enduring patterns of politics and not just what's happening at the moment. We'll talk about the politics of the federal bureaucracy, what President Trump has called the deep state. Makes it seem more exciting than it really is, although it's definitely important, the federal bureaucracy. We'll talk about the politics of the Nevada executive branch. We'll talk about the politics of the federal judicial branch, most obviously the U.S. Supreme Court, and we'll talk about the politics of Nevada's courts. All right. That's the syllabus. And in doing that, I've talked a bit about how to navigate the course most effectively on Canvas. The point there that I want to emphasize before we leave today and move on, right? Navigate this course through the homepage and check it out 2 to 3 times a week. All right? That's a recipe for success. Everything's there. So each substantive module that covers the material of the course, starting out with Module 1 on government, democracy, and demographics. Each module like that is going to follow a pattern where you have an introductory video from me, relatively brief, an overview. Then there'll be a series of narrated slides that walk through the material more carefully. And then there will be a quiz on that material, a practice quiz that you can take up to 3 times. doesn't count for a grade. Doesn't count towards your grade, but in fact, you will get a grade on it, but it doesn't count towards your grade in the course, if that makes sense. And what you should also know is a lot of the quiz questions will become exam questions. So it'll super behoove you to take those quizzes within each module. All right. And there might be some ancillary material that I post at the bottom. Maybe a YouTube clip, something like that. So that's going to be the general structure of each module. Intro video, narrated slides, quiz, maybe some ancillary material. All right. And and I'll try to put at the top of the queue the most relevant material that we're covering at that time. And so initially you're going to see a module for the syllabus, a module for the textbook, a module for module 1, module 2, right? And then once we take exam 1, right, those substantive modules that were covered in exam 1, I'll move those to the bottom. And then at the top, you're going to see the most recent modules that we'll be covering for exam 2. So I try to rearrange the queue constantly so that what's most important and relevant for you is at the top or near the top. All right. Exam 1, when we get close to that, I'll put that at the top, obviously, because it's kind of important, along with the study guides, by the way, study guides. Current events quizzes, when one's coming up, I'll put it at the top. When a writing assignment is coming up, I'll put it at the top. I'll try to keep the discussion thread module near the top at all times, because those are due pretty regularly. So just recognize that. I do work hard on constantly rearranging the order of appearance of the homepage, because that's where I want you to access the material, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to navigate it. I don't want you to have to look around a lot. It's going to be pretty intuitive, I hope. If you have any questions, man, totally let me know. I'm super open to feedback. I don't think I'm perfect. I can always get better like anybody else. I'm flesh and blood. Feedback is much appreciated. That might be feedback right on this link isn't working, this link is expired. Maybe you have a question about the material, maybe some slides are not working correctly, maybe the video's cutting in and out. Anything, reach out and give me feedback, because I can't know that there's a problem sometimes unless students alert me. All right. I've talked longer than I wanted to. I try to keep these at about 20 minutes, man. I am sorry about that. So I will see you in the funny pages, and I'll be ready. We go live in a way on Monday, and today is Friday. It's in the afternoon. All right. Thanks all. Take care.